Hear that? That's now Crispy and McCrispy strips meeting Creamy Caesar sauce. Sounds extra crispy. Caesar sauce at McDonald's for a limited time. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Rise up! Team Rise! Rise up! Team Rise!
This is the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best of Cardinals talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root from CardsWire.com, USA Today's NFL Wire site that, of course, covers your Arizona Cardinals. And we continue with our 2026 opponent preview series, as we have done for the last several years, come right before training camp. I bring on writers and podcasters from the opposing teams the Cardinals will face in the coming season to find out and know more about them. Obviously, in this show, what we've got is the Kansas City Chiefs, who the Cardinals will take on in Kansas City in Week 11. And joining me is Chiefs Wire writer Ed Easton Jr. Ed, welcome to the show. This is the first time, like other than a couple conversations, this is the first time you've been on the show, the first conversation we've had. So I really, really appreciate the time.
Oh, hey, Jess. Thank you for the invite, man. I'm just happy to be on and also get to talk some football and a great upcoming matchup.
Yeah, so we go. The Chiefs have been absolutely fantastic since Andy Reid took over. Last year was the first real hiccup. They finish 6-11. They've, granted, it's not last place in the AFC West because thanks to the Raiders. They struggled offensively. They still were pretty good defensively. And ultimately, what bit them in the butt towards the end of the year, Patrick Mahomes tears his ACL. Then Gardner Minshew comes in and immediately injures his knee. And then you guys are stuck with with a kind of a mess at quarterback going for the rest of this season. Was there anything to kind of go through what went well, what didn't go well for the Chiefs in 2025?
Well, it's always interesting when you try to find something that went well in a team that went 6-11 and struggled for primarily the entire second half of the year. I will say one of the biggest accomplishments that they were trying to figure out were the offensive line. I think they know Josh Simmons is their left tackle for the now, the future, and has potential of being a Pro Bowl caliber player. Kingsley, who originally was the thought to be the left tackle about 2 years ago when he was drafted, he's proven to be more of a guard. So putting him on the inside, he was pretty successful in that spot. And, having him alongside perennial All-Pro like Creed Humphrey, having Trey Smith there, it seems like they kind of found a good formula. Now, in terms of right tackle, that's pretty much the biggest question. But just basing off what they did last year, I feel like the offensive line took a step forward when they were healthy, that was the biggest issue is staying healthy. But once they had their core together, they were pretty successful. I think that was a positive you could take from it. Defensively, as good as they weren't as good as they were in past years, I should say. Nick Bolton, in my opinion, he stood out even more. He kind of showed why he is the leader of that defense, even though Chris Jones is the more accomplished player, all the Pro Bowls, all the All-Pros. Nick Bolton is the heartbeat of that defense and how important he is when he's in the middle right there at linebacker. So I think that was another thing that really stood out in terms of a positive. Now, you said the negatives. There were plenty to choose from. I could look at dealing with the injuries and showing not just the injuries, but the depth and the lack thereof behind not only Patrick Mahomes, but different positions on the offensive line. A lot of guys that weren't proven that kind of had just slot in there because they needed bodies. It really affected them tremendously. And going back to the quarterback position, you broke down how Gardner Minshew, who is a Cardinal now, how he was able to jump in for probably a couple of plays in the C game and get injured. That was a big blow because for the most part, Gardner looked really good in preseason. And for him to go down after probably a couple of snaps, you saw the writing on the wall even more for this team. Chris Oladokun, a long-time backup, a long-time scout team quarterback, was put in a very unfamiliar position of having to start a game and start multiple games at the end of the season. So this was not ideal in terms of what the Chiefs were trying to do. That's obviously another big negative. So the quarterback position in terms of the depth behind Mahomes, knowing that Mahomes is a guy coming back from an injury, that's one of the biggest topics for them. And my last big negative in terms of last year was the pass rush. There was no pass rush for the most part. Chris Jones could only do but so much when you are double teamed pretty much every play when you're out there. The edge rushers weren't getting to the quarterback. Karlaftis had it. He wasn't as strong as he was back in 2024. Guys like Omenihu just didn't make an impact. And I think that was a huge struggle in regards to the defense. The secondary played well at times. They played so well that they earned contracts with the Los Angeles Rams. So it just lets you know that it wasn't a problem in the back end. A lot of the issues were on the pass rush. So those are big things that stood out for me.
You look at some of the numbers. Travis Kelce bounced back a little bit, but like he's 30. I'm going to be 37 years old. You didn't get more than no one else after Kelce even touched 600 yards. Rashee Rice got close in 8 games. Hollywood Brown, 587 yards. Xavier Worthy, 532. Was the receiver position continued struggle or source of frustration for the Chiefs last year because they could never get consistent production from guys?
You know what? A lot of people like to point to that when you see the numbers, and it stands out immediately when you see guys not even over 600 yards receiving. To me, the biggest issue was getting the guys on the field. That was the biggest problem in regards to just Mahomes being effective, having any type of chemistry with guys. Everything kind of went left. You could say last offseason, once the ruling came down about Rashee Rice having a 6-game suspension, that threw what they really wanted to do out of the window for that opening series of games. And to add on to that, the very first series against the Chargers in week 1, Xavier Worthy, a little friendly fire, runs into Travis Kelce on a cross route, and he's never the same. We found out later it was a labrum injury. He tried to play through it. He was supposed to be a huge part of the offense last year. I remember just watching training camp and seeing the different plays that they were running for Xavier Worthy. Like, they really had huge plans for him to be, I wouldn't say the number one, but definitely a guy that will be featured often in the offense. And him going down and then having to play with an injury, it just didn't help. Hollywood Brown could only do but so much. And I'm not saying that Hollywood Brown is not the same player, but he also came off a serious injury in 2024. So you're dealing with guys that are banged up, not really able to stay on the field. The positive from that group was Tyquan Thornton, who the Chiefs did bring back, showed some flashes of what he can be in this offense. I just think the biggest thing was having guys available. If you can't get guys in their right spots every single game, it's hard for Mahomes to build chemistry. It's hard for guys to know where they're comfortable getting the football. It just builds a whole bunch of issues that carried on during the year. A lot of it was hidden during the first half when Mahomes was healthy because he's Patrick Mahomes and he makes things happen. But it's hard to make things happen when you have guys that are in your starting lineup one week and then are possibly on a practice squad in a couple other weeks. So it's really tough. So I think that's what the hardest part with the wide receiver position was, guys being available.
Interestingly, Mahomes has masked a lot of it feels like that the way they structured the roster, that they were letting Mahomes basically, okay, we need to get better defensively. They focused on the defense and they kind of left the skill players alone, or just didn't have the luck with that. And we're just hoping that Patrick could elevate them. And unfortunately, last year was the only year that the magic didn't happen. He couldn't elevate them enough, and then he got hurt late in the year.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair way to look at it. And I know you mentioned Travis Kelce. It's funny because people say, Kelsey's lost a step and all these things. I agree he's not the same Travis Kelce maybe 5 years ago and, the perennial all-pro player that was dominant. But when in terms of what he had to deal with last year, I felt like he showed a lot of people how valuable he is to this offense, how valuable he is to Patrick Mahomes, because Kelce was available every game. I don't think people realize that he played the entire season. And he was the main target. He came into the game, 36 years old, knowing that he is the main target for a team that originally did not want him to be the primary target for Patrick Mahomes. It was all the guys I named earlier. But injuries, availability kind of messed things up. Mahomes knows he could trust Kelce, but then when you get Kelce getting double covered now at 36 years old, and he still had a Pro Bowl season, but it was a little ridiculous after a while. Patrick did the best he could. He also didn't have a running game that was consistent. Kareem Hunt was your leading rusher, which says a lot because this isn't the same Kareem Hunt from his rookie year where he was a dominant rusher. He still was great in short yardage, but Isaiah Pacheco was also injured. He was battling injuries playing the entire season. They just didn't have that consistency on any part of the offense. So when the Mahomes injury happened, he was playing hurt for the most part, as we all found out a little bit more later. But, he won't say, hey, I'm hurting and take me out. He's not going to say that. Patrick Mahomes is not going to say that. But he was often playing injured and just trying to make things happen. But, with everything stacked up against you, offensive linemen out, wide receivers out, running backs not playing well. You got 36-year-old tight end is your best option. You can only do with so much. So, I think that's what really it came down to. There's only so much magic anybody can have.
Absolutely. Let's move on and look at what happened this offseason. So coming up next on the Rise of Seaward podcast, the Best of Cardinals Talk on the Web, let's look at their offseason coordinator change, free agency, and the draft. That's coming up next on Rise of Seaward.
When the moments in your life are too important to miss, you can trust O'Reilly Auto Parts to keep you and your plans on the road. Our professional parts people can test your vehicle's battery and even give it a charge if needed. In most cases, we can install your new battery for free. It's just one of the many services we provide at O'Reilly Auto Parts to ensure life's best moments don't find you stranded.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Matt Money Smith here from Believe in Chargers. Let's talk about Gusto. I appreciate you small business owners. You're the heartbeat of America, but at times, time can get away from you. Let Gusto take care of how your business operates. Automate your payroll. Get some HR with Gusto. It is the fastest way to cut friction so you can focus on what moves the needle and leads to success. So how does Gusto do it? Gusto is online payroll and benefits software built for small businesses. It is all in one, remote friendly, and incredibly easy to use so you can pay, hire, onboard, and support your team from anywhere. They're ranked number one on G2's highest satisfaction products list for 2026, and you'll be joining 400,000 small businesses that use Gusto. It is simple. It is quick to switch to Gusto. Just transfer your existing data to get up and running fast. Plus, don't pay a cent until you run your first payroll. So try Gusto today at gusto.com/believe. That's GUSTO.com/believe, BLEAV. And you're going to get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. Again, that is 3 months of free payroll at gusto.com/believe. Again, one more time, gusto.com/believe.
Hear that? That's now Crispy and McCrispy strips meeting creamy Caesar sauce. Sounds extra crispy. Caesar sauce at McDonald's for a limited time. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
We're back on the Rise of Seaward podcast, Best of Cardinals Talk on the Web in our opponent preview series, talking to Ed Easton Jr. from the Chiefs Wire as we look at the Kansas City Chiefs from the Cardinals will take on in Week 11 on the road. The first thing I want to note is the return of Eric Bienemy. What was the decision? The going from Matt Nagy to Eric Bienemy? What led to that change?
Well, I think the biggest thing was accountability. That's what all the veteran players that have won Super Bowls with this team, and you're talking about the leadership, Mahomes, Kelce, James Woodchester, people that have been there for so many years. They all say, the number one name that pops up is Eric Bienemy. The way he runs camps, the way he runs practice drills, he doesn't care who you are. He doesn't care if you're a multiple-time MVP. Doesn't care if you're going to go down as one of the greatest tight ends that ever played the game. It's all about the fundamentals. It's all about discipline. And he's one of the few guys I think that can get in anyone's face, and no one's going to be like, okay, he's out of line. He's stepping out of line. You've heard rumblings in the past about how tough he is, but a lot of the best players, they prefer that way of coaching. Some people like to be coached harder than others. That's just the way it is. But during their success, Eric Bienemy made a name for himself for pretty much being in people's faces, getting the best out of them. And I think that was something that they've been missing the last couple of years. This is no, attack against Matt Nagy, who I think is a great offensive coordinator. But when you have guys that during that whole time of winning are used to a certain way, a certain discipline, a certain accountability on the offensive end, it goes beyond X's and O's. And I think that's where a lot of people that were criticizing Eric Bienemy during his first tenure, they don't realize that's what he brings. He may not bring this play call, that other coordinators do bring, but it's something that he does with this offense to make sure that they are doing the little things to get better. I know it was such a big deal. I had spoken with so many people this past offseason, former players, legends of the team. The first thing they all brought up was Eric Bienemy being back is the biggest difference. So this is something that is deeper than not even just the team, but this is franchise. This is everything. They really wanted him back, and they jumped on the opportunity to get him.
And then we move to free agency, where there's a change at backup quarterback. So Gardner Minshew signed with the Cardinals, and the Chiefs land Justin Fields. And it feels like Mahomes is going to – everything points to Mahomes being ready for week one. So we thought that Justin Fields would get the opportunity to run the Andy Reid offense and kind of reestablish his value in the NFL. He might still be able to do that, but they trade for Justin Fields. What is the feeling? What the difference between Fields and Minshew in Kansas City?
Well, I think the biggest thing was they wanted to bring in a quarterback that's a starter quality, and that's what Gardner Minshew was last year in terms of being a backup. They realized that I think in past years they always want a veteran quarterback behind Mahomes. But they realize, hey, Mahomes is, he's the guy. He's not a young quarterback anymore that needs to have a veteran backup. You need a guy that's ready to play as if he's a starter right now. So that's what you got with Gardner Minshew last year. This year, Justin Fields, the situation with the Jets didn't work out. That kind of lowered his value in regards to what the Chiefs had to give up to go get him. And it was just an opportunity to say, okay, if Patrick Mahomes is not available week 1, week 2, or even possibly not available at all during the preseason, we need a guy that can go out there and win games, not a guy that's going to just manage the game. We need a guy that's going to go out there and win games as if this is his job. So I think they saw that in Justin Fields. He's still an amazing talent. We know what he could do running the football. He makes some, I can't say he makes poor decisions, but he's had bad moments in the NFL that usually stand out for people. But he is still a quarterback that they consider as a development project. He's still young. So they like what they see out of him. And I think, and this is, once again, this is just my opinion. We're going off a small sample size of off-season workouts here. He could be viewed as a guy that could be using gadget plays, can be used in certain scenarios. And Andy Reid's very creative and enjoys these type of opportunities to use players to their best of their ability. And have him as the backup just probably for this season, because I don't see this being a long-term thing. I see this being a one-year thing, and that's based off of the draft pick of Garrett Nussmeier in the 7th round, who they really like, and they see him as possibly being the long-term backup option, for Mahomes for however long he's going to be playing. Garrett Nussmeier has a high ceiling. Had a bad year because of injuries last year with LSU. So they kind of view him as a guy that could be the long-term answer at backup. So it doesn't have to be every season looking for a new veteran backup. Because that's been the Chiefs pretty much objected the last, I'd say, 3 years.
If you look at the losses in free agency, obviously several guys just left, but they traded Trent McDuffie to the Rams. They lost Jalen Watson to the Rams. Who are the other impact losses that are going to be felt going into this year?
The first thing that pops up in my mind is Leo Chanel. He goes to the Commanders, and he was a guy that probably didn't get a lot of press. I don't think a lot of people discussed in terms of his impact, but he played special teams, played critical downs on defense. He was a guy you got to put anywhere on the field, and he's going to make an impact. So not having him there as that linebacker, special teams, sometimes can line up as a lineman, do different things for a Steve Spagnuolo defense. And I don't know if you guys, well, I'm pretty sure you guys know, Steve Spagnuolo's defense has so many different packages, so many different, looks that he likes to throw at offenses, that a guy like Leo Chanel, who is sort of a utility type of guy, but can start, can play this role, can play that role. He means so much for what this team is, and he was getting better each year. A lot of block kicks, sacks that were needed, big tackles. You name it, Leo Chanel's name always popped up. I just look at him as a player that it's tough to kind of replicate that. If I were to look at the offensive side of the ball, we talked about Hollywood Brown, how important he was, just for being a veteran presence in that locker room. And I think that was something that the Chiefs needed, another veteran voice at wide receiver, a guy that's had Pro Bowl years, who's been a number one because of how young that room is. From Rashee Rice to Xavier Worthy, Tyquan Thornton. These are young wide receivers, and they just add Cyrus Allen as well. Having a guy like Hollywood Brown with such a great voice, Juju Smith-Schuster was the captain of the wide receiver group last year. I know a lot of people didn't think about that, but his voice is also going to be missing from there. I just look at those things in terms of internally how much it affects the team. It may not seem on a stat sheet, but how much they relied on these guys is a big deal.
They add the biggest free agency addition, of course, was Ken Walker. How important will he be to have a legit, solid number one running back who can handle that workload? And secondarily, an understated addition was the signing of Amari DiMercato, who spent the last 3 years with the Cardinals. He's really good in that secondary role. He's really good on third down. He can return kicks. He can pass block. But that running back room looks a lot better right now.
Oh, yeah, without question. And I love the fact that you broke DiMercato. I thought he was really overlooked, because when you get Kenneth Walker, that's going to be the headline. You got the Super Bowl MVP on your team. But just a quick note with DiMercato, I think it's going to be interesting to see how they want to use him, because it's going to be a lot of competition for that kind of third down back type of role. Brashard Smith, who was a rookie last year, played a lot for the Chiefs. They see some positives in him. Emmett Johnson, they just drafted this year. Another guy that can do a lot of different things in the backfield. So I think that's going to be a good battle to watch in camp. But back to what you were saying with Kenneth Walker, having a primary running back that has the ability to take over games is something the Chiefs have not seen in years. And we're going back, I don't want to say the Priest Holmes years, but Larry Johnson, having that primary running back who could just take over games, Jamal Charles, that's what we're getting back to if you're talking about Kansas City Chiefs football. And Patrick Mahomes really hasn't had that. He hasn't been able to have a guy that you could say, it's a running back game. Let's just give it to him. It's been so long since there's been a 1,000-yard rusher for the Chiefs. And Kenneth Walker wanting to be an every down back, has openly said that's one of the reasons why he signed with Kansas City, because they told him, hey, you're going to be our primary running back and not sharing responsibilities like he was doing in Seattle. I think this is a great situation, a guy that really wants to be here. I think it will really open up the offense. And like you said, a lot of times with the wide receivers, they need to know that they have a running game that'll help open up chances down the field. So for Mahomes recovering from the injury, this is the best case scenario. I think this is a big year for Kenneth Walker.
They kind of made some changes in the defensive backfield. Obviously, McDuffie and Watson gone, but they bring back L'Jarius Sneed, who did not have a good time in Tennessee. That worked out well for the Chiefs the first time, and now they get him back. Kader Kohu, Kyer Elam, Aloy Gilman at safety. What is that secondary going to look like for the Kansas City Chiefs this coming season?
I'm going to be honest with you. It's going to be a fun watch because you got a lot of talent. It's a lot of talent, a lot of guys that need to prove something. So when you have all these guys there, then you have the 6th overall pick and Mansour Delane. when you picked in the top 10 and they trade up to get you, you're expected to start. That's usually the idea. So you have veterans there that have a lot to prove, and what their opportunities. L'Jarius Sneed, who's a guy that Steve Spagnuolo loves, and I can tell you this: like Steve Spagnuolo, well after L'Jarius Sneed had left, was still bringing up his name in press conferences and just what he does for this team. So getting L'Jarius Sneed back, I know for a lot of people that may not follow the Chiefs may not see that as like the biggest deal because he was never a Pro Bowler with the Chiefs, but he's one of the more underrated defensive backs in the NFL. And in Steve Spagnuolo's system, which he mastered, he was literally their most important second player in the secondary. So having him back there, being a mentor to Mansour Delane, and seeing what else he has pretty much left in the tank, because he's dealt with injuries over the last 2 years. There's less pressure on him to perform. I think a big part of what he's going to need to be there is be a mentor and be a guiding light for the younger players in that secondary.
Any other notable additions in free agency that we haven't been able to talk about?
You know what? I think that the main thing is I feel like the secondary, because of the way it's been rebuilt, Alohi Gilman is going to be a guy that I think there's going to be pressure on him in regards to his role and how he's going to fit in. I've heard different things about him and how adaptable he is in regards to defenses. Steve Spagnuolo's system is very different, but I think how he plays is going to affect a lot in regards to the secondary, because the Chiefs also lost Brian Cook. I know that's not discussed a lot. He goes to the Bengals. I think he played well, and can Gilman kind of fill in for that role? And what do the Chiefs really see in him long term? So he's a veteran player, smart player. I'm just really curious to see how he fits in. To me, that's one of the bigger off-season signings because of how he's going to fit.
And we move on to the draft, and you already mentioned Mansour Delane, number 6 overall pick. They traded up to get him. There was some talk here in Arizona that they were interested in one of the edge rushers, and we're considering that the Cardinals, we kind of had them pick the Chiefs as a potential trade partner. Ultimately, they didn't want to go all the way up to number 3 to get one of the pass rushers, but did go up to get Delane. The interesting how the Chiefs tend to do it is that they let L'Jarius Sneed go right when they see Trent McDuffie as ready to be great. And then he's great. And then he's going to be real expensive. And so they move on from him. And now they draft Delane, bring back Sneed. It looks like the Chiefs are trying to play things with the timing of things and cost at cornerback. Delane looks like he'll be great. A lot of people question the decision to draft Peter Woods 29th overall, considering there was questions about his lack of production. Like he's a more talented player than he was productive player at Clemson.
Yeah, it's interesting, the Peter Woods talk and a lot of questions of whether or not he would fit in this type of system or whether or not the Chiefs went too high for him. I will say this: he's been one of the more impressive players during off-season workouts. A lot of things that he's shown is just raw, natural ability that, you're talking about a guy who's a defensive tackle, probably sometimes D-end, a guy that is going to be moved around often in a Steve Spagnuolo system on the defensive line. You want a guy that's like a freak athlete and try to refine what he can do and make it better. So I think that he's going to be in a great situation next to Chris Jones. And, he's made it known that he's going to be shadowing Chris Jones as much as possible, learning from him, because the Chiefs essentially want to get the next Chris Jones on their roster for the next couple of years. So the Peter Woods pick, it makes a lot of sense. And seeing what he's been doing in off-season workouts has really validated their selection. Going back to what you were saying with Mansour Delane and just the whole topic with the Chiefs and the way they handle defensive backs, or I should say cornerbacks, over the years, I remember going back to like Marcus Peters and the Chiefs not wanting to pay him and then making a deal. I think this is just something that they do because they know their coaching system. I've always put it on that. They know their coaching staff. They know how to develop corners and feel like they can get a younger value and not have to pay the premium like everyone else for a star corner. So they want the guys to go out there and make their money, the Trent McDuffies of the world, L'Jarius Sneed, to go out there and make their money. But because they have a stronger belief in their coaches and how they develop players, they feel like if they could get a younger player in the draft or a player that still has something to prove that may have had a bad opportunity somewhere else, they will, be able to handle it financially as well as get the most out of them. So I look at it as just a real, I guess a merit for Steve Spagnuolo and his staff, Dave Merritt at defensive backs coach, that they know the value of their developmental system. But Mansour Delane, I think is going to be a great player. I actually had a chance to speak with Patrick Peterson, a guy you guys know very well, and he co-signed him, another LSU guy, and they see a lot of great things in what he can do. And I feel like more people just need to watch his day-to-day. So it's, to me, it reminds me so much of the Trent McDuffie draft pick. It just reminds me of that.
R. Mason Thomas, pass rusher out of Oklahoma in round 2. An underrated addition, I think. With the Cardinals needing edge rush and not doing anything in the offseason, Thomas was one of the guys that I kind of pegged as a potential in round 2, round 3. What's the read on him so far?
A high motor player with that quick ability that they really needed in terms of a pass rusher, because they brought him in. Let's be honest. They brought him in to be a pass rusher. They brought him in to get to the quarterback. That's it. You're going to see a lot of him on third down. I think they kind of want to find out what he is, because he's a tweener. He could be a linebacker. He could be a lineman. All they know is that he can rush the quarterback. Do they want him to put on weight, which I think is probably the talk right now, because they want to see him a little bit more on the line. I think that they like what he is in terms of his ability. I think it's just about finding out what role works the best for him long term, because he could be a special player if you find the right situation for him. A guy that kind of, he reminds me of Nick Bonito in Denver. Just they have that same type of, like, what position are they? Do you put him on the line? Do you put him at linebacker? Can he do this? He can do that. So I think he kind of fits that mold in what they want to do on defense. And remember, like I just said, Leo Chanel was a guy that was kind of doing that, and he moved on to the Commanders. So I think that R. Mason has an opportunity to take that role on and take it to another level because of his pass rush ability.
4th round pick, cornerback Jaden Kennedy, running back Emmett Johnson, Cyrus Allen, receiver, quarterback Garrett Nussmeier. Any of those guys do any of them project to have any sort of role this year in 2026?
Well, I think Nussmeier, no. I'm going to just say that right away. I feel like he's going to be sitting and learning. He's a guy that they have plans for in the future. But when you look at just I keep going back to the running back position with Emmett Johnson and just what he can do. They like a lot of his qualities as either a third down back. He has every down back potential. I see him getting a lot more opportunities. Now, once again, how will the running back depth chart work out? We all know during training camp, that's when decisions are made. That's where, unfortunately, injuries happen. That's where things kind of switch up. But they've liked what they've seen in terms of his energy, in terms of his knowledge of the playbook. He's a guy that could be, in my opinion, was going to get a lot more opportunities than people expected. Cyrus Allen, it's going to be an interesting situation to see where does he fit. I think if he does make he's going to make the team, but I think he's a guy that's going to be seen a lot on special teams. I think a lot of these guys are going to be more special teams players to start their career, especially Cyrus Allen. Could he be in the kick returner conversation? Because I think that's really the battle for him right now in the return game.
Coming up next on the Res of Seer podcast, the best Eric Cardinals talk. Well, let's move on and look at the 2026 season. What is expected from the Chiefs there? That's coming up next.
Hear that? That's now Crispy and McCrispy strips meeting creamy Caesar sauce. Sounds extra crispy. Caesar sauce at McDonald's for a limited time. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
On Rise of C-Red. We're back on the Rise of C-Red podcast, the best Eric Cardinals talk on the web, talking to Ed Easton Jr. from the Chiefs Wire as we continue with our opponent preview series with the Kansas City Chiefs. The Cardinals take them on in Kansas City, Week 11. Looking at the 2026 season, Patrick Mahomes comes back. They kind of remade a few things. What are expectations for the Chiefs this year? Because last season, I know the Chargers and the Broncos kind of felt like it was the changing of the guard. Was it just a down year, or are the Chiefs going to be looking up at the Broncos and the Chargers this season?
You know what? I look at this season, and I was telling a lot of people towards the end of last year, I think 2026 is probably the most pivotal year in the Chiefs' history, in years, I should say, because Travis Kelce, likely this is his last year. Andy Reid, he's the oldest coach in the NFL right now. You have a lot of older players from the Super Bowl run outside of Mahomes. You have about Chris Jones, who's been around. You don't know what the future really holds. So you look at this team, everyone else has gotten better around them. Do they know who they are anymore? Do they still have that same swagger of a champion, of a team that is used to just getting through the regular season and just as long as we get to the playoffs, we'll be fine? Can this team be dominant? That's what the biggest question has been, along with can they be explosive on offense? So I look at this team and say in 2026, and as you know, the first game of the year is Monday Night Football against the Broncos. It will set the tone for what this team is going to be. I think Denver has proven they're not afraid of them at all. Denver has been very aggressive in each game they've played. The one game the Chiefs won last in 2024 season was off of a blocked field goal. So it's like, Denver's had their number. The Chargers have stepped up. I think a lot of people in the AFC West don't fear the Chiefs anymore like they did for those 10 straight years. 2026 is gonna mean a lot. And that's why I think Mahomes is pushing so hard the way he is, because a part of it is pride. You won for so many years. You want to remind people that you're still the top dog out there. So Mahomes wants to come back, be the guy that he is. He wants to still be considered in the MVP conversation, Chiefs in the Super Bowl conversation, of course. And then, like I said, the sentimental reason, this is likely Travis Kelce's last season. Once again, I'm not saying officially, but that's what it's looking like. And you want him to go out on a Super Bowl, at least a Super Bowl run in 2026.
They're scheduled early. Obviously, they've got the tough matchup against the Broncos in week 1. But the next 3 are fairly light. You get Colts, Dolphins, Raiders. But after the bye, the 3 games in a row, they're going to be pivotal. Chargers, Seahawks, Broncos, before it lightens up for the next 3 against the Jets, Falcons, and Cardinals. What do you think for this year? Do you see what do you think their reasonable floor and their reasonable ceiling is for 2026?
Well, just based off, like we said, with the coaching staff and just the personnel they still do have here, I think a reasonable ceiling is winning the AFC West again. That is reasonable. I feel like this team gets off to a strong start. I know you mentioned how they have like the game against the Colts. Colts is still a very good team. Let's not like kid ourselves here. They ran into some bad luck with the quarterback position, but when guys are healthy, they are a very talented team. I think if the Chiefs get off to a strong start, AFC West is, you have to win the division. That's all they talk about. So if they can win the division again, that would be their ceiling. The floor is, another disaster. I think it'd be another disastrous season of them missing the postseason. I think they have such a small window in terms of what they can and cannot do. So I wouldn't be surprised if this team was like around the 500 mark towards the trade deadline, that we could see a significant move being made because they know they're in win now mode. This isn't a situation where you're building for something. I think they're doing whatever they can. They're putting all their chips to the table that they have to win right now while they have the core that they have together, because it's just not going to be like this. And I think last year was a good wake-up call that the rest of the league is watching and they are getting better. And a concern that I have is this is the first early bye week that they've had in years. I mean, was it week 5, I believe, is the bye week?
Yeah.
So it's very early. They're used to the bye week being later in the season. And I'm curious to see how that's going to affect things with an older team, mind you.
Yeah. And like the end of the season, that's not going to be an easy run for them after, because they have I look at it kind of it goes in waves. So you've got the Broncos, tough. You've got 3 games that are lighter. The Colts are, yes, are quality, but you've got Colts, Dolphins, Raiders. Okay, more winnable games. But then after the bye, it goes Chargers, Seahawks, Broncos. Tough. Jets, Falcons, Cardinals. Less tough. But then it goes Bills, Rams, Bengals, Patriots, 49ers, Chargers. That's a gauntlet before closing the season against the Raiders in Week 18. So, yeah, this is a team I think that could go as low as 6 wins again. But I think that a good team, 11-12 win season, they could do it. They could pull off as well.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. It's so, like I said, because it's such a small window. One injury we saw last year, multiple injuries happened, and this team fell apart. If Patrick Mahomes is healthy, they have a good chance of winning it. I think a lot of it's going to rely on number 15.
And as you look at that game in Week 11 against the Cardinals, is that considered a should-win, toss-up game, or question mark?
Well, it's always hard to tell this early, but I think the early indication would be it's a should-win just because the Cardinals are going through a change, different quarterback situation. You have the rookie running back, Jeremiah Love, that the Chiefs were very interested in at one point during their draft process. I see Arizona as a team that's on the rise, and it's going to be interesting to see how that's, we'll talk about Week 11, these two teams face off, how the Cardinals start off the year. But if you're basing off of last year's teams, obviously I think the Chiefs are a better team when healthy. But I like the Cardinals in terms of what they're building. I like the weapons that Arizona has put together. It's just going to be one of those things where are the teams going to be health-wise heading into Week 11? Because, as you know, it's hard to project out who's the better team right now. Right. But I do like what Arizona is building. I feel like they did a lot of good things in the draft.
Yeah, and thank you for your time, Ed. Overall, this is a Chiefs team that it's a pivotal year. It's a team that could win it. But it feels like they're holding on still before they have to really, really transition things. Ed, aside from Chiefs Wire, do you have anything else cooking out there in the world for like content in that sense?
Well, I'm always going to continue to keep putting out content. I have interviews. Every interview that I've done, whether it's on Chiefs Wire or any other platform, you just go to my YouTube at Ed Easton Jr. I'm at Ed Easton Jr. on everything except for TikTok, so I don't have a TikTok. Just making sure people know that. But you can find any updates, anything I'm putting out, and it's just sports. If everybody that's a sports fan, tune in. Same way I'm checking anything that Jess is doing. So it's all good stuff.
All right. Thank you, Ed, so much for the time. That'll wrap up this edition of the Rise Up Here podcast, Mr. Cardinals Talk the Web. We have more opponent preview shows, and we've got more training camp, pre-training camp content coming from me and normal co-host Seth Cox. But until that time, thanks for listening. And as always, we'll be back again soon.
The snack wrap plus Caesar sauce equals extra crispy chicken Caesary greatness. Sounds delicious. Caesar sauce at McDonald's for a limited time. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up, See Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise up, Red Sea, be Red, See Red, and of course, Rise Up, See Red.
Rise up! Rise up! Rise up! Rise up!
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.